Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron and I'm back again with another exciting Battlytics review coming out of the Alpha Strike box set. If you have not heard about it, don't know what it is, guys, get on the internets. That's all I can tell you. There is a new box set coming out. It's got a whole bunch of new minis in it. New repos. There are two new actual minis, right? The Wraith and the Pouncer. We looked at the Pouncer. We're looking at the Wraith now, but the box set is chock full of exciting stuff. Let's talk about the Wraith, though. Why do I love the Wraith? Well, I remember the first time I saw the Wraith in the TRO, I think 3055, and such an alien-looking design. I believe this one was built by Comstar in response to the whole clan invasion. Lots of new tech on it, and it really looked nothing like any of the old like 3025 era sort of chunkier, more rugged looking mechs. This thing really neat. Jumped out at me with sort of that very thin, visor cockpit. Really cool. Excited to get the mini. If you hadn't guessed, I can't wait to get my hands on that. So what am I looking at tonight? Tonight I'm looking at the TR2. If you can guess why I don't like the TR1, leave it in the comments. I'm just going to tell you right now, I hate Intersphere large pulse lasers. It is the worst weapon in the game. I mean, it shoots barely further than a standard medium laser, and it sucks. I mean, it's 9 damage, 10 heat. Yeah, you get the -2, but like, who cares? I don't. It's just a terrible weapon. So the TR2 swaps that awful thing out for a slightly less awful Intersphere ERPPC. Yes, it builds up tons of heat, but at least it's got range and it can punch for 10. So I'll take it. So we're going to take a look at that one. It's not cheap, $14.85. I mean, it's a hefty price tag, for a mech of this size, 55 tons. But I mean, all things considered, the Wolverines aren't that far off, especially the newer ones where you start loading them up with tech. So we'll see. Is it going to be worth it? Is it going to break the glass ceiling? I don't know, guys. Wraith Battlytics coming right up. Let's check it out. All right, here we are. The Wraith. I'm excited. I'm excited. We've had a lot of mechs in the 5s and 6s. Will this one do better? I don't know. I'm like, I want to be optimistic, but I'm just not. I'm not optimistic, guys. 1485. It's almost 1500 battle value. It's only got 3 guns. It's only got 3 pea shooters on it. So this mech was built in 3057, and this was, I'm looking on Sarna right now. I believe this was a Comstar design. I don't know. Anyway, it moves extremely fast. 711. It jumps 7 as well. So that's like assassin level speed in a 55-ton package. It's can dissipate 20 points of heat, which is, not bad. XL fusion engine, endo steel chassis, ferrofibrous armor. It's got all the goodies on it. It has 8.5 tons of armor, 152 pips. That's 82.2%. So it is right on par there with almost everything we've looked at, in the last few, at least the Pouncer, the Black Lantern. So not bad. In terms of armor distribution, what confused me about this particular mech was that it's not great on the arms. And I figured for a mech where everything's located in your arms and there's literally nothing else. Like if you get your arms blown off, you can't even punch. Like you bite, like this is a Monty Python reference time. I guess you can kick and you can DFA. It's like the only time you DFA when you're in a Wraith and you have no arms. Anyway, so the armor distribution, we'll see. We'll see. So weapon-wise, what does this thing have? It's got an ERPPC, Intersphere variety, and then it's got 2 medium pulse lasers. Now, I don't dislike Intersphere medium pulse lasers. They are extremely close range, 6 hexes. I would like more, but the -2 is nice. You can do some good stuff with that. But otherwise, there's really nothing else exciting going on here with this Wraith. So all we can do now, guys, is dive in to the offensive benchmarks and hope that that ERPPC does enough until those medium pulse lasers get into range to justify that meaty battle value price tag. So let's take a look and see. All right, so here we are, offensive benchmarks for the TR2 Wraith. Does anybody know why it's a TR2? Like every other mech, like the Marauder, it's like MAD, 3R, and it kind of spells Marauder. Like all of these mechs have generally have chassis codes that sort of sound like the mech. And there's a few where they don't, but there's good lore behind it. I don't know what TR2 stands for. Is it like a Terminator reference? I don't know. Somebody knows. I know one of you knows, so leave it in the comments. Educate me, edify me. It's my favorite part of doing these reviews is when you guys just pour your knowledge on me. So let's take a look at the benchmarks. I'm not thrilled. I don't have high hopes for this thing. I will say this. It seemingly does very well on heat, obviously, until the pulse lasers get into play. There's really not a whole lot that you can do here. But what was interesting is with the pulse lasers, there wasn't, just holding the trigger down at close range was actually most effective, because even though you're taking on a gunnery penalty, the offset from the pulse lasers actually, it's just better. So you'll notice that the optimized damage and the red line damage is the same, because when you're at that range, taking on the gunnery penalty from heat is negligible to just continuing to fire everything, which is pretty interesting. Fun tidbit if you're using the Wraith, just overheat. I was disappointed in the lethality on this mech. I was honestly expecting more. It only got 54.9% of the kills on the Javelin. Now, damage per hit was pretty good. Critical hits, obviously, just under 3 because it only has 3 direct fire weapons. Time to kill was 11.85. Not great. I don't know. Not much to say here. It doesn't have that stopping power that you really want out of a 55-ton mech. And it's interesting because this mech was something that people were asking for in the comments and also on Patreon. I got a couple messages about the Wraith, and it had nothing to do. It was actually prior to the announcement of the box set. So when it sort of came out, I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And people were such big fans of this mech, and I don't know, edify me. Again, pour on your knowledge because I don't see it. I'm not there mentally. Like it just seems like even with the other config with the large pulse laser, they could only be worse. So interested to sort of hear how it plays out on the tabletop. I know we're talking benchmarks. I know you're gonna typically try to get into range as quickly as possible with this mech, but let's face it, just charging at your enemy 11 hexes every turn isn't always optimal either. You're going to get your head shot off. Your lance mates may not be able to keep up, right? You're going to fall out of range of supporting fire, so on and so forth. So, I don't even think necessarily that the benchmark isn't, is that far off from reality, because again, you're not just going to be sprinting into your opponents point blank. So I don't know. Tell me what I'm missing here, because so far the benchmarks, I think, are a little underwhelming for the Wraith. But let's look at the survivability, and we'll see how this thing does. All right, here we are. So armor's looking good. Again, we talked about this. I think I would have wanted more on the arms. Now, they're sort of right at, the average thing. The other weird thing about this guy is the head only has 8 pips, so it's only got a total of 11. I hate this. Why? It's why? It's like Comstar hates its own pilots. It only has 11 total pips. It's terrifying. It's well, you could take a PPC to the head and survive, but I guess mathematically maybe that's a good thing, because I'm not sure what does 12. I don't know. What does 12? Does anything do 12 damage? I guess not, right? Most things either do 10 or 15. There's probably a couple of things that I'm not thinking of, but still, 11 just a super weird number, but maybe it's actually super optimized and I'm the fool. But anyway, armor distribution, it's not bad. I would just put a little bit more on those arms, I think. Survivability is great, 97.1%, phenomenal. This thing reminds me of the Black Lantern that we looked at, right? Super, super fast, very high target mod. And it is incredible the difference mathematically on a 2d6 probability curve that a TMM of 3 or target mod of 3 and a TMM or target mod of 4 makes. It's astronomical in terms of survivability, and we see it time and time again. So the average target mod for this thing, 10,000 simulations, was 3.99. I mean, it's very rarely, taking motive hits, and it's very rarely seeing a dip in TMM. I mean, it happens, but it's very rare. So, 3.1% essentially means 3 in 100 shots, right? 3 in 100 hits that you take, you're going to see a motive hit, which is, if you think about it on the tabletop and play that out in your head, it's not even once a game. So very, very good survivability. The primary cause of death is, of course, engine deaths, courtesy of that XL engine. But in this case, I'll be honest with you, I'll take the XL engine for the extra speed, because this is where you use an XL engine. Not to like free up space in your stupid heavy mech to add like another LRM 15. Like, it's not worth it because it's going to get you killed. Here, it's a perfect trade-off, because yes, you've got more critical load and you've got higher risk to hit that engine because it's in the side torsos, but that bump in speed is so beautiful that it actually keeps this thing alive. So well done in terms of the defensive design, in terms of the mobility design. I don't know, maybe this will actually pan out. Let's take a look at the efficiency. I don't know. All right, so here it is. Oh man, I was hoping for so much more. So 4.9 out. This is the worst out of the last few that we've reviewed. And I'm telling you right now, it's because the damage is total garbage. And it's so disappointing because, again, this is like clan syndrome, where your battle value is jacked way up because it's got super fast speed, great, jump capability, high target mod, but it just doesn't do the damage because it just, in my opinion, like, why to pulse lasers? I just don't think it's worth it. But we'll talk about that later. So efficiency, survival rate, damage loss, like, let's put it all together. Survival rate is fantastic. It lends itself to almost no damage loss, which is terrific. The problem is it doesn't do any damage to begin with. So, it is what it is. When you optimize it, I don't think we went over the numbers, right? Baseline 94.7, optimized damage 104.8. It's a percent gain of 10.7, right? You can really spend heat to build the damage up. You only lose 1.2%, so your net change is 9.3 positive. That's very, very good. But again, it's not doing a ton of damage. 100 points of damage over 12 turns, it's just not a lot. When we look at the gunnery sensitivity, it's not very high. The reason it's not, like Battle Cobra stupid is because it does have that ERPPC that does require someone with a functioning, frontal cortex to actually shoot and hit with the PPC. Once the pulse lasers come into play, that's why that pulls that gunnery sensitivity way down. I think if we were looking at the TR1, you'd probably see, a very low or potentially even negative gunnery sensitivity in this thing, because you can run crap pilots and still do pretty well. This thing, 4.5, 4.9 in the gunnery 3 and gunnery 2 zones respectively. Going up to gunnery 1, there's almost no step up there. You're almost running flat beyond gunnery 2. Yeah, you'll see a little bit in terms of return on investment. Like, you will see a gain. And somebody, by the way, another digression, asked this question. They were like, well, Aaron, the efficiency's still going up, so doesn't that mean you're getting more for your buck? And the answer is yes. Like, a 5.1 is better than a 4.9. That means you're getting more for your battle value. Even though you're spending more, you're getting more, and it is better. However, in the context of the broader force, do you want to be spending that much of your force value on this Wraith? I don't know. That's sort of the question. And that's why I sort of show this in terms of a curve, because it shows you, how much of a gain are you getting from one step to the next. And you can see, going from 4 to 3 is a big jump. 3 to 2 is a decent jump. 2 to 1, it's not very much of a jump. So explaining that in slightly more detail for those of you that care. But let's talk about this mech. Let's talk about the threat. Let's talk about the roles. And I want to talk about a few things that I think maybe I would do a little bit differently in terms of the loadout. Because it's an Intersphere mech, you know, customizations are a thing. Maybe some mercs or some pirates get their hands on this thing and want to do some wiring. So let's take a look at that and we'll talk about it. Don't go away. Here we are, role evaluation. So there were three things that came to mind for me. Cavalry, of course. I mean, it's blazing fast and has tremendous survivability. Get it across the battlefield. Get it in somebody's face, you know, and just be disruptive with this mech. Which leads me to my second favorite role for this mech, which is Picket. And there are very few mechs. There are some light mechs that I love to put in a Picket role because they're just annoying and they're hard to kill. This is a bigger mech that I would put in a Picket role because it's annoying and hard to kill. And when those pulse lasers get into range, they are very devastating, and they can do decent damage. And you know, you can be moving at full speed, you can be jumping, you can be taking that penalty for jumping, but you can still hit with them, which is very, very cool. You can potentially, with a jump of 7, I made a joke earlier, I don't remember which one it was, either the Pounce or the Black Lantern, about Axemen jumping in your rear arc and like who would do that. This thing jumps 7. If your opponent's not paying attention, you can 100% jump into their rear arc from 7 hexes away. So I mean, it's definitely a thing you can do with this mech. A jump of 7 is very, very devastating. And you know, I did make the comment about DFAs earlier. I mean, they're not great. It's like a last ditch thing, but if you are out of weapons, a jump of 7 definitely makes it more viable to do than, you know, if you have a jump of 4 or something like that. Okay, so threat assessment, you can see the bars, they're low. The thing doesn't do a lot of damage. Its peak alpha strike is 22. That's at 6 inches. That's when those medium pulse come into range. It's respectable. Like, it's not bad. But again, this is a 55-ton mech. I would expect a little bit more punch, I think, than that, especially when it's coming out of 3 different barrels. So I don't know. The good news is your ACD cap is very, very, very high, 90.9%. And that's courtesy of the pulse lasers, the benefit you're getting from hitting with those. So when you shoot everything, you're going to do 90% of your total damage on average, right? So on average, you're basically doing 20 points of damage. And that's reliable. That's dependable. Now, you're going to build up 4 points of heat every time you do that. You know, you can build up a ton of heat very, very quickly in this mech, especially if you're running and jumping. That 4 is going to get even higher. But, you know, that's basically where it's at. So the other nice thing is arm-mounted weapons. We've talked about this before. You know, you can torso twist, you can fire into your rear arc with that ERPPC or with those, you know, with those twin pulse lasers. If something annoying like a locust is like trying to get in your rear arc, you can just turn around and nuke it, which is convenient. So a couple of things, though, I'll say. The one reason I don't like, I'm not a huge fan of IS pulse weaponry, is it's heavy. Their range is not great. Their damage isn't great. And I feel like the standard variety beam outperforms them like every time. Let's talk about the medium pulse lasers specifically here. You've got, you know, basically a 6 hex, 6-inch maximum, like long range. It's tough. And they're 2 tons a piece. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot. You can fit 2 standard medium lasers for the price of 1 medium pulse laser, you know, and you're shooting further and you're doing more damage, right, for that 2 tons. So it sort of raises the question, like, why would I want an Intersphere medium pulse laser? Yes, I get it. You know, you get the +2, you know, the -2 rather, you know, to your gunnery. Like, you know, it's better in terms of hitting and reliability. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that I would rather have 2, you know, Intersphere medium pulse lasers instead of 4 Intersphere standard lasers, or even 3 in a heatsink for that matter. So just something to think about. If I'm going to mod this mech and I'm using, you know, our DFA refit rules, which, you know, doesn't allow you to swap a small laser for an AC-20. There's some rules around, you know, how crazy you can get. I would trade those pulse lasers out for, I think, standard IS medium lasers, any day of the week. So that's that. Another variant to look at, another modification you might want to look at, just food for thought. I don't hate the IS-ER large laser. I actually think that's a pretty decent weapon. It's not obviously nowhere near the clan equivalent, but it's still pretty good. So you could look at swapping out the pulse laser for an ER, maybe swapping out all the pulse weaponry for just, depending on what area you're playing in, either, the ER large and 2 mediums, or an ER large and 2 ER mediums, depending on what you can do. Maybe you could throw a couple heat sinks on, maybe even another ton of armor. Who knows? You can get crazy with it. It's a great platform. The efficiency here wasn't great, but again, with the 2 medium pulse lasers, I wasn't expecting a ton. But it is what it is. I love the Wraith. I wouldn't field one in this configuration or the TR1 config, but I would totally rip the thing apart and put different beam weapons on there, and I bet you could probably get this thing in pretty good shape. And I do think an ER large and a couple of mediums, maybe 2 or 3, might be the ticket. But I would have to fiddle with it and see. Anyway, enough of my mad ravings. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you're as excited as I am about the new Alpha Strike box set. If you have not tried Alpha Strike and you think it's the worst thing ever, I highly encourage you to buy the box set and give it a try. It is really fun. It's like refreshingly simple. Throw some units on a board. You can take a whole bunch of units that you could really never play in Classic, and finish a game in a reasonable amount of time. It's really fun in that regard. Oh, and speaking of cool things, guys, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. I want to know everything you feel about the Wraith. Tell me about your feelings. What am I missing? What do you love about the Wraith? What variants are good out there? I know there's a TR3 out there, but that's it's like Word of Blake stuff. So yeah, tell me what I'm missing here, because I feel like so many people love the Wraith and maybe just love it for the design, but I'm not seeing the sheer combat effectiveness out of this thing without some little tweaks to those weapons. But anyway, guys, don't forget Aries Games and Minis. If you want to spend your money on mechs, that is the place. Fighting Piranha Graphics. Got Hardware Studios, got, of course, the box sets, have the Alpha Strike box set, of course, when that is in stock, all the Lance packs, pretty much anything you need, Ironman medals, Army Painter paints, you name it, Aries Games and Minis. And if you want to spend your money anywhere else, you can spend it supporting the channel on Patreon. We've got 3 tiers, as little as $1 a month, shows us how much you love the content. So we appreciate it. If you want to check it out, you can head on over to Patreon. But that's it. I'm all done marketing. Again, hope you enjoyed this review, and of course, stay tuned. Always great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming. Have a good night.